Today's podcast might seem a little bit different to you. After countless interviews of Brighton and Hove's up-and-coming entrepreneurs, I thought it was about time to flip the mic and interview one of our best. Matthew Cox is best known as founder and managing director of Charles Cox, closely followed by host of this podcast, Matthew Cox Enterprise. But he also oversees more than a dozen businesses across the property and service sectors. I wanted to find out more about the person behind the conversation, his journey, his mindset, and what drives him as a leader. Today's guest is Matthew Cox.
Thank you. Welcome to my own show, sat on the other side.
We've flipped over the mic.
I'm on the dark side.
I know. Now you know what it feels like to be a guest on your show. So I guess my first question is, for those people that don't know you, how would you introduce yourself nowadays?
Well, that's really strange you ask that, because traditionally I've been Matthew from Charles Cox, and probably over the last few years, I wouldn't have steered away from that, but I've tried to have my own brand identity and kind of be me as a person now. And I never really gelled with the word entrepreneur. It just sounded all a bit sort of poncy, really. And if I'm honest with you, it just doesn't really tell you anything, called business owner or whatever. But actually, those words do kind of sum up the situation, so I've kind of had to be at one with lean into it a little bit. So I would probably just say I work in the property sector, but I have other industries, multiple business owner. We look for gaps in the market, and then people make the assumption that he's entrepreneur, so it's like subliminally saying I'm an entrepreneur without using the actual kind of word, if you like, because I think people just think that that's like just so like saying I'm a business owner. Yeah,
I do agree with you, actually, because I always find it quite tricky when I describe myself as a founder. I'm a founder. But I know what you mean. You know, you lead your businesses and you look for commerciality and enterprising business opportunities. And we'll obviously come on to that a bit later in the podcast as well, because I think the thing that I'm really excited to talk to you about is your sort of integration of your ecosystem and how you came about that, because I think a lot of people don't know how you've acquired and why you've acquired certain businesses. So we'll come on to that in a bit.
Definitely.
So you talked about property and business ownership. From my research, I can see that was something that you started to look into in the early 2010s. What first drew you into property specifically?
Well, growing up, my dad worked for the local government, and he was very much kind of 9 till 5, but really keen on his job and the rest of it. And then he was unfortunately made redundant, but he got a fairly good payout from it. He then went to work for a big corporate doing the same sort of job. It was outdoor lighting. But he used that money to do a buy-to-let property, and that was kind of in your mid-90s, say. And during that period, there was obviously a bit of a boom for those of you that are old enough to remember that. Obviously, I was quite young, but I had this kind of like childhood of being brought up of painting, decorating, repairing, stuff like. They'd have a model, they'd buy a property, they would do it up, generally speaking, themselves. And we would have to sit on the floor, play our Game Boys or whatever, me and my sister, or maybe like pass some tools or something. And that was a lot of weekends chewed up with that, but it installed quite a good work ethic in me that, the job's not done till the job's done. Because we would then have the fun times, but they would maybe come on a Tuesday afternoon where you'd have half a day, but we'd lost the weekend. So that was the beginning of my journey, if you like, into property. And then I got taught a lot of skills to refurbish properties as I grew up. And then I started buying my own and so on. And that was my kind of passion. But I actually originally left I had a corporate job, but I went to university to retrain. And I went into sort of business management, marketing, law, economics, that kind of, it was like a multi-degree, basically. And then I ended up at a surveying practice, which I really liked, surveying and property, but actually what I found I liked doing was running the business and growing it. That kind of shadowed any other want to be a chartered surveyor or whatever, and ultimately that led to me setting up Charles Cox 2010, and kind of we're here where we are now.
Amazing. Because when I first met you, I said, is it a family business because of the Charles Cox name?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everybody why it's called Charles Cox?
Well, I'm fairly open about that, and I think probably a fair few people have asked me that over the years. But Charles is my middle name, and I just thought that it sounded more established at the time. So you got to remember that I'm working in a surveying practice, and they're quite like, it was called Clifford Dan. It no longer exists now, but and then you had like Strutt and Parker was another local one, and like Smith and Jones, and all accountancy, all those kind of proper conservative style businesses, all kind of have those sort of long established names. They don't use like, not that Zoe is not an established name, but it's quite a modern name,
more traditional name,
or a Daniel, for instance. It would be like Dan, or like, very Britishy kind of names, really. And then I took my cue from James Kahn, who was one of the Dragon's Den people. He had a recruitment business which was called Alexander Mann. Completely fabricated name, because he pulled on Alexander being very English and posh, and man having this kind of like, we're a power and a force, like. So he called his business Alexander Mann, quite well documented, and I thought they're quite good because they're almost like it's a name fabricated, but you're pulling upon those like subliminal messages. So Charles being posh and Cox being a particularly English name, and it might be my middle name as well. Work well with the logo, with the little CCs, as you can see everywhere here.
On all of the branded merchandise.
Indeed. So that's really kind of, that was that journey up to that point. And fortuitously, charlescox.co.uk was available, so that made it very simple. And also the business name as well, like where you set up a limited company in the UK, you obviously have to select a name, but Charles Cox Limited was available. So there's lots of things to do for that, but it was very clean and easy.
Yeah, it definitely feels very heritage, like there's legacy behind it, because that was the reason that I asked you whether it was a family-run business, right? Had you taken over the reins from your dad? But your dad must be incredibly proud that obviously the lessons that he taught you when you were young around work ethic and how you have taken that into your career now.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, he's not particularly vocal about it, but I think that's just kind of, it's an unwritten thing, isn't it? But I think he's proud of what I've achieved, and and he has contributed and helped towards that, I suppose. But he still works hard now. He's retired, but they still maintain all their own properties and the rest of it. It's just that I've taken a different attitude, and I'm like, you can't do that at scale. I've taken what he's taught me and run with it. Stabilisers off.
Amazing. You're in the park with no stabilisers on. So that is a really good segue, actually, because you now run 13 businesses. Have I got that right?
Yeah, I think that's it at the last count. It might be more, it might be 14 or something. I don't know. Common misconception is that it's a lot of businesses to run, but you have to remember that there's a difference between a property business and a trading business. And what I mean by that is a letting agent might be a property business to people, but it's actually a trading business. They're dealing with customers, telephone calls and the rest of it, as opposed to like if you buy a property, you're the landlord and you're renting out, whether it's commercial, residential, you might buy a bit of land, that kind of thing. That's a property business because it's not kind of what I would class as like trading income. It's rent income as opposed to like actual services that you've provided. So out of those, it's probably 15 companies or thereabouts, but out of those, probably about 6 of them will be property rental or non-trading businesses, and the other ones will be trading of some nature. So.
Got you. Was it always the plan to have multiple businesses?
No, not particularly. In terms of having multiple limited companies wasn't particularly the plan, but actually, as you get better at business as an owner, you realise how to be tax efficient and you realise what your structure is. And those, I talk about it a lot when I'm on the other side, but having that kind of 10-year plan and a goal, and building a business so you could sell it even if you've got no intention of selling it, is something that I kind of took to heart. And probably in recent years I've been on other people's podcasts and stuff like that and things, and they say that a lot there, so that really rung true to me. And by having a holding company and then loads of groups loads of companies underneath that group, it actually makes it quite tax efficient when you come to exit those, because if you sell the whole company, you don't actually pay tax on the sale proceedings because the money goes into the group. Because effectively, you haven't really done anything. All you've done is crystallised the worth of that trading business. Let's say it's worth £500,000. You sell it, and that £500,000 goes to the group, and there's no taxable allowance on that or deduction. Obviously, if you draw it out to go on a round the world cruise or something, then you'll have to pay personal tax on it. But
fair enough.
Yeah, and we don't give tax advice before anybody
I was gonna say.
runs with that. But it is a very efficient way, and you should always look into what's convenient for yourself. But for me personally, having that strategy of building stuff, because we've built quite a few things up and sold them. Sometimes I haven't finished building them and I've gone into partnership and they've said, look, we want to buy you out now before it gets too big and we can't afford to buy you out.
Yeah.
Because there's always this fear that I'll just sell my share to some other investor or something from when you're in a partnership. So a fair experience, but try to nowadays, in the early days it was probably a bit messier as you find your feet in the world of business, but these days it's a case of build it so you can sell it if you need to sell it or want to sell it in the future.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that a lot. There's definitely, I've got questions for you on that too.
I'm sure you have. You've got lots of cards.
Yeah, lots of cards, lots of questions,
lots
guys.
Of questions.
What do you think has stayed consistent about you as an entrepreneur, and what do you think has changed the most?
I suppose consistency is key to any of this sort of stuff. So consistent want to drive the business forward. I've always liked doing that. I've always been quite good at marketing myself or marketing the firm, and that's quite consistent throughout, like always taking the opportunities to try and get our name out there somewhere along the line, even if it's just a cheeky plug or something like that, or parking a branded vehicle in the right place at a charity event or something. Like, I've been known to go to charity golf days and I've gone and parked a branded vehicle the night before because I want that space there because everybody will see it.
That is a good top tip.
So I'll go and park the branded vehicle in that space and then I'll get a taxi back home, and I'm like, well, it's £20 for the taxi, but it's actually what I'm paying is £20 to premium that parking space. As
a marketer, that's very good return on investment, I would say, Matt. Your £20 cab ride.
Exactly. And then the car's there in the morning, so when you finish, then you can get in it as long as you haven't been drinking or something.
Yeah.
You go and get
and
it
then
the
everybody
next day.
sees that it's you in the branded vehicle.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good.
So I did one side subject where Barclays were the main sponsor, and I remember Matt, who was running the event, came to me and he said, you've done so many pens and leaflets in the goodie bags they were giving away, and you've got your Mini with a flag underneath one of the wheels, because I'd put one of those teardrop flag things on the thing. He said, it looks like you're the main sponsor. Poor old Barclays. And I remember him saying that because I thought, God, that's pretty impressive that you feel like that. Bear in mind how much marketing power Barclays have got.
Exactly.
So, for very little return on that. So, that's probably something that I've done consistently. Try to do that, look for ways of expanding the business, profitability, all that kind of stuff. Things that have changed over the years, I would say, probably are more along the lines of the business structure. So, in the early days, we just had everything under one limited company. And it was only... I've probably been exposed to hanging out with a lot of older people than me because they're in business and are competitors, or not like friendly competitors, if you like. You'd see them at other events and they would be talking about their exit strategies. I wasn't in a position to capitalise on them, but they'd be like, oh, I'm trying to split this out of the company and it's going to take me like 2 years to like get all the books in order and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, oh, is that really what happens? You decide one day that you're going to sell it and then you spend all this time doing that or whatever. So that kind of changed my thought, because when I was at Clifford Dan, when I worked there, we did acquire a few businesses, but they were normally everyone coming to join us. So we didn't have this kind of retirement problem, if you like. They kind of come and work for us for 2-3 years and then faded off. So, so I think that has been a change for me, because at the start it was just like chuck it all under one thing, and then as it's grown, it's all become separate entities. Really.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually that you talk so much about structure. So we'll come on to that in a bit. So I think
Your podcasting is much more structured than mine.
I wanted to make sure I was prepared for you. So obviously that's given us a really good sense of who you are and how you think. But I now want to move on to some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. And I've listened to a few of your podcasts recently where you've talked about your clients very affectionately and dealing with legacy clients. So my first question in this next section is that you've worked with some of your clients for a number of years, but what does a legacy client mean to you?
Me personally, a legacy client is somebody that was there at the start or near to the start and supported you early on in that journey, and or you gave a fairly good discount to get them over the line at the start.
Yeah.
So I had customers that I'd given a good discount for, but not necessarily weren't really always there for me. They were there because of the discount, as opposed to other people that believed in me and wanted to help me. And there's a distinction between the two, because I think you'll always get the people on the discount. That's a given. The other people are true legacy clients. And then when you get bigger, you have to distinguish between them, because you might have given a crazy discount to somebody and then you can't really sustain that anymore, and you're going to have to address that. The ones that were there for you at the start, they should take that as it comes. The ones that wanted the discount are the ones you probably run the risk of losing, because they'll start looking around for better deals and the rest of it. So two different types of legacy client, and you just have to kind of make sure you know which one each person fits into, and then you can address those as you grow. Yeah. And I think it is important to address them as you grow, because we got to a state where, I mean, for me, 2010 to 15, it was kind of a sort of a side hustle, I suppose. I mean, it was a good income. It was a salary, but I was able to run it from home. After that, it became a full-fledged business with employees and the rest of it. But it was quite hard, because you had to identify those people at the early days. And then, of course, you get to like 2 years in and you've got salaries to pay and rent and stuff. And I'm like, I can't give you what is the equivalent against market rate, like an 80% discount off of your fees. It's just crazy. Like, I need to put them up to like 50 and then next year 65. And then I can still give you a discount, but it can't be that kind of crazy level.
Yeah, I think it's really hard, actually. I think it's one of the top things that I've struggled with as a new business owner as well, because as soon as you get into that pattern of kind of an hourly rate or a day rate or something like that, you move into like freelancer territory. Yeah. I'm trying not to be a freelancer. Well, I'm not a freelancer. I'm building a scalable business, as you said. But as soon as you start to talk in that language, I have legacy clients as well now who expect the same rate. And I'm like, well, it's not really about that, actually. It's about the value that I'm creating for you and your business and what value you put on that. And distinguishing between the two is always a bit tricky. It
is. And I think if they're true legacy client that supported you for your cause at the beginning, they'll understand. It's the ones that don't understand are the ones that just came for a discount. Yeah.
One of my questions, actually, we're gonna hop from one to the other, was dealing with those people. So how do you make the difficult decision to part ways with some of those clients, or is it not actually that difficult after all?
I think it feels more difficult than people actually make it to be when they actually get there. So, for example, first of all, distinguish between, are they there for the discount or are they there because they supported you at the beginning? I had a fairly large client right at the beginning that was there for the discount. And we still have clients right now that are here for the discount. They're not legacy, but they've joined us because the volume they present us gave us enough
opportunity to discount them. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and in the early days, it is about money in the till, because you've got to pay your own bills and the rest of it. So you kind of sell your soul a little bit to some degree.
You say yes to all the things. We talked about this on the last conversation we had. But yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah, and it's hard at the beginning. And being a founder or a startup is like that. You know, we deal with a lot of AI people at the moment, and they're founder startups, and you're dealing with the owner. And I know that if their business is successful, 2-3 years down the line, I've bat an owl's chance of getting hold of that person anymore, because they would have grown so much. But their pricing is like crazy. You know, they're almost like borderline desperate as you're hanging out the phone. Like, oh, we know we said it was $5,000, but we can do it for 3.5. But if you sign up today, I can do it for 1,000. And I'm like, it's gone from 5 to 1,000, and I haven't even opened my mouth.
Yeah.
because they want the money in the till.
Yeah, it's really tough when you get into those types of conversations, I think, and when you're sort of just chasing the money in the till.
Yeah.
That's really tough as a business owner.
But I think back to your kind of question about identifying them, I suppose, was kind of what you were asking. I think you need to identify those two things, and then the ones that were your friends that helped you, I don't think they'll mind. You know, you go to them and say, look, I'm really grateful for your helping. I can still give you a discount, but I've got staff now. I've got rent. I've got offer. You know, I've become a viable business, and I need to make it profitable. So they'll also understand that. The ones that came for the discount, you must expect them to be like, well, we'll look around, and they probably won't find anything cheaper anyway, because you'll still give them a bit of a discount. So, but you have to go through that emotional journey of letting them look around and sitting there biting your nails, thinking, "Oh, I wonder if they'll find another me from 5 years ago."
Oh no, don't. I had a job once when I very first started at JP Morgan, and it was a contract role for 6 months, and I absolutely loved this job, and I was so proud to work there. My mum was so proud of it.
Yeah.
And I remember that awful feeling of people coming in to be interviewed while I sat at my desk, waiting to find out if they were going to keep me. But they obviously had to go through the process of looking at external candidates. It was horrendous. That's exactly how you'd feel when they're shopping around at the end of their retainer or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we have a serviced office in a building, and it's owned by a local council, and they have to go for a remit every 5 years of who's going to actually manage the building. So they had like Regis, and they've got Let's Do Business at the moment. But every time it's like this emotional journey for all the staff involved on the front desk and the rest of it. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to lose my job next week or not.
Yeah.
You know, but then the council go, oh, actually, all said and done, we'll just stick with the same people. But they have to do that exercise.
Yeah. It's horrible. It's horrible. And mine was only on a small scale. So obviously the theme of evolution is ringing out a lot in everything that you're talking about. And I'd like to now move on to acquisition and what you look for in acquisitions. So we've talked before about you having multiple businesses, 13 or 14, we're not quite sure. And
that sounds proper blasé, doesn't it?
No, not at all. No, but it's, you know, I can completely...
It's easy to forget about some of the ones that don't actively trade, though. That's the thing. Like, they might just be passively sat there. So.
I think we say 14. Sounds good. So when you're considering buying a business, what are the first things that you look out for?
Well, initially, I'm cut from a cloth of like buying stuff that's a bit unloved and making it better,
lovable.
So a thing that strikes me about a business is one that I'm like, it's losing money or it's got problems, but I know how to fix them, and the current owner has given up, doesn't know how to fix them or whatever. That's perfect for me, because it'll probably end up going cheap, because they'll be desperate
ready
to
get
rid of it. I recognise that I'm going to have to put some hard work in to start with, but I can easily systemise things and get them working. And then I'll look secondly at what those actual problems are, how surmountable they are. Like, if they've got loads of staff, I'm going to have to make redundant because they're overstaffed, and that's half their problem. That's tricky because it's reputational damage if you're going to have to let like 6 people go or something, because they'll be straight on Facebook or Google or something.
That's when the structure is a bit of a hindrance, hey?
Yes.
Everything in Charles Cox's portfolio gets tarnished with the redundancies.
Yes, exactly. So I have to then factor that in, and if I can, I'll get them to do the redundancies if there are beforehand.
Nice.
But even then, it's still seen as part of a process, isn't it? But yeah, and then obviously you've got like subcontractors, like software and bits and bobs like them. Like, how difficult is it to get out of those and get them into ours? Or is it the same software they're using and that's an easy transition?
Yeah.
And you get better at identifying those things as well. What kind of purchase is it? Is it like a group structure where I'm buying a whole limited company, warts and all liabilities, I'm just replacing the director and the rest of it? So that's slightly more complicated, but it is more tax efficient for the person selling it. Or are they like a multidiscipline practice and a department's losing their money and they want to get rid of that department within it, and therefore they're going to have to pay tax on that because it's not part of a group structure, because they're selling an asset essentially, like a motor vehicle, but it's a portfolio. they will pay tax on that, and then they may or may not know that, and obviously I'll be factoring that in, that they probably misguided by their accountant, so they're not, because some owners will be like, well, I can sell it for this, but I know I'm going to have to pay tax on it, and what I want to do is exit with this amount of money, which means I've got to sell it for this, and I'm like, it's not worth that. You're going to have to take the hit, or spend a couple of years separating it out into its own limited company so that it can be sold off as its own entity at that moment. So those sort of things are the early bits that I look for. Also, the people you're dealing with, you know, do you get that kind of sixth sense of like there's something they're hiding, or there's, you know, some reason why they want to get rid of the business, or are they really hard to deal with? Like, some people can be hard negotiators, some are softer. I've dealt with business owners that don't want to deal with the redundancy. And that department the losses were masked by the other businesses that they use. Other people are not too fussed about that, but they want all their money up front rather than like any deferred payment, because it's quite usual to pay some on account and then pay a deferred amount later. But some business owners, no, I want all my money now, and I'm like, does that make me feel like maybe the client base is not as stable as you're making it? Because you're worried.
What's the urgency?
Yeah, you're worried that in a year's time some of those clients would have moved on. Well, then that's my worry as well. So yeah.
Is it a leaky bucket?
Yeah, and I think the thing is if you can establish all of that and make sure that you're limiting your own risk. So the least you can, the perfect deal is no money down today, and in 2 years' time I'll pay you for the portfolio based upon what we've got left of it after I've run it for 2 years. And
does that happen? Has that happened?
Very rarely. Normally that's because it's losing money and they can't afford to put it in. So that's where you hear these like, I bought a business for £1 type deals.
Saving you from bankruptcy.
Yeah, and sometimes the owner might come and work for you as well. We've had that before. So I mean, we're not doing it like on a mass mergers and acquisitions scale, but we are doing it on a kind of local basis. And I think those ones are easier and hard. They present two different types of scale, really. They're easier for you to talk directly to the owners and kind of sort of engineer the situation to your advantage if you can do. But when you get to a certain size, maybe kind of turning over more than £1 million, then you're trying to attract like capital investment from like investment firms who will just come and buy you for the return. They're not necessarily looking, I mean, they all want to grow the business, but it would be like an ongoing thing, and they'll probably have a 10-year strategy that we buy it now, build it up a bit more from where it is, and then sell it to somebody even bigger. Those type of people are harder to deal with in that sense because they're very numbers focused.
There's less of the feeling that you were saying, or the exciting, unloved bit.
Or, we love all the staff, we don't really want them to go. I'm like, well, okay, I can keep them all, but now your business is worth nothing. Because it's totally overstaffed. And you know that, that's why you want to get rid of it. So,
knowing everything that you said at the beginning there about, the bit that like gives you joy or excites you about finding your acquisitions, do you actively seek them out, or do you predominantly have people that approach you?
It's a combination nowadays. It used to be me really going and trying to find them. Making sure I was in the right place at the right time, that kind of stuff. But there are agents out there that specialise in brokering deals and things like that. But we're also now looking at a bit of AI software which like scans company's house, information on websites, all that kind of stuff, and compiles that into kind of a list of owners that may be looking at a point where their business has lost money last year, or perhaps they're getting to a certain age. It's funny, they call it generational change or something. Is the button you tick on the thing. Basically, they're getting old. But they didn't.
They may be looking for their worldwide cruise that you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. That will probably help us a bit. We're currently looking, we've talked to a number of providers about that because that's quite a big task for us to scour through all that information.
Aggregating all of that information.
But just hearing like business owners, they're struggling, or it's poor health, or like their sales fallen through, or they've lost a big client and the owner's 59 years old, and I'm thinking they've just lost a big client. Now they've made a couple of people redundant off the back of that. It's probably time to reach out. I do find January is a good time. It's like I always refer it's like the Christmas sales but for business, because people are just like sick of their business. New year, new me. I had 16 out of hours call outs, I had 300 emails to come to, or like I couldn't see my family on Christmas, like Boxing Day, because I had like 2 emergencies to do it. Like, and they come into the new year and they're like, do you know what? I think now's the time.
I'm done.
I'm done. Like, I just want to sell it now, or
Yeah.
I can't. Like, we bought one last year where the owner he gave staff bonuses, and then all they did was complain that they weren't all the same, because some people work full-time, part-time, different roles. They all talked to each other, and then they went back to him just before close of Christmas and was like, how comes I only got £100, she got £200, you know, and that kind of, and so he came to me in January, because I tried to buy another business off of him, but he sold it to someone else in the end. The structure worked better for him, but he came straight to me and said, I don't want to put it on the market, nothing at all. I just want to sell it to you, because I liked what you did before, and I wish I'd have sold it to you in the end, but benefit of hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Always.
They didn't pay him all the money, and there was a big legal argument, but I wish I'd have sold it to you, because I know where I can find you if you didn't pay me and all the rest of it. Like, that's his pain point now, isn't it? Because he's dealt with a big national company, and then they argued about the final payment.
Yeah.
But I don't want to deal with staff anymore. I'm just sick of them. You know, arguing about, you know, they're ungrateful now, whatever it might be. I don't know. You know, these things are complicated, and the thing is that's just part of business life, I think.
Yeah, I think that must be so hard as a business owner and somebody that's grown their business at scale to then get to that point in their career and their business journey where you feel like your team and your staff are that disenfranchised that they're whinging about what size of bonus they received at Christmas.
Yes.
It just must be so disheartening, mustn't it? I mean, I'm still in like the dizzying heights of now being a new business owner. And I hope that continues for a really long time. But I do think about it. I think about, you know, exit strategies. A lot of people, a lot of my peers, colleagues within the small business sector talk to me about like how I'm going to create a scalable business, given that obviously at the moment my business is all me, and how you detract from that. But for business owners that have, you know, done that like yourself, to then get to a point where you feel like your team are not, you know, appreciative or grateful or supportive of what you're doing within your business must be really difficult for somebody.
Yeah, and I get that as well. Like, you are getting older and stuff, you know, this particular person, and they just don't want the hassle, really.
Yeah.
And that was probably just a straw that broke the camel's back, and they were already thinking about it anyway. It's just right place, right time stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to be fair, you do create yourself problems if you start paying different people different things and you don't have any consistency to them. And that's something that I've learned, that you can't favour one over just because they're full-time or part-time, or you like them, or you have to have
or you
a
think
reason.
they've done a particularly great job.
Yeah, or have a structure. If you say part-time people get half of the bonus that the full-time people get, that's your structure.
Yeah.
Not just gut feeling.
Not just gut feeling. Not just gut feeling.
Yeah.
My next question is actually about gut feeling. So beyond the numbers, I know that you've talked about this briefly, but what tells you that a business has genuine long-term potential?
Well, it's always difficult to know that it's got long-term potential, because we're not in the space of buying like a startup to bolt on, like a Facebook buying WhatsApp or something like that. They knew that had potential to bolt on. For me, it's about making sure it fits into our ecosystem. So I guess it's kind of like them buying WhatsApp, because it kind of fitted in, because Facebook Messenger, I don't know if anybody even knows that or uses it at all. But
I used to use it.
but it's
Sometimes
basically
I get messages on there.
Kind of what WhatsApp is, really, in its own right. But actually, they recognised that WhatsApp was so much better, and it had a brand image as well. You know, Facebook's kind of for your 40-year-old dinosaurs or whatever they might be. So I think they did the right thing there, and it's a bit like when I'm approaching those things at a much smaller scale. You know, is that going to fit into our ecosystem? Like, we do a lot of property stuff, and we were spending like well over $100,000 a year on cleaning across the board. So we thought we'd set up a cleaning business, because then we're in control of it, and we've got some input into it. We can see where the staff are. If something emergency happens or something, we can deploy them into that. And it might not make like groundbreaking profits at all, but it's actually a support to an existing system, a bit like you're buying your WhatsApp. It's not probably lost them money to start with, because there's no way of monetizing WhatsApp. But as the years have gone by, it's actually become like the preferred thing. I mean, I don't even use normal text messages generally anymore. People have it on their PCs and the rest of it. So, yeah, that's what I would look for in terms of like growth, if you like how can it fit in with our existing system.
Are you ever tempted to buy businesses outside of your existing ecosystem?
Well, I suppose I flirted with the fringes of that. I did have a I suppose people would call it like a VA business where you can act as a person. On some of the early podcasts I mentioned that as well, and we did everything from bookkeeping to call handling to general admin services for business owners that didn't want to employ people. Basically, it was a cost-effective way. So that was probably more on the fringes. And then I also own half of an accountancy firm as well. So you could argue they're not really property related, but they allowed us to utilise those staff when we got busy ourselves, so we could outsource back to the company that I owned. That's how I bought it, because I used it to start with, and I thought this is a good business model. And the accountancy firm, we're doing a lot of taxation, a lot of numbers, a lot of shifting around of funds and moving things. So it's important that we have the right advice, and to have someone that's sort of a business partner / in-house is invaluable to us, because we can just ring them up all the time and ask them and talk to them like a human. So yeah, I guess the outsourcing stuff was on the fringe, which I've now sold my shares in all of that. That's all been exited from, if you like, that market. So, because it was on the fringes, but it didn't really kind of, it was good, but I think we just got to a point where it needed, some serious like marketing put into it really, and it's quite a difficult business to scale.
Yeah. I think as well sometimes, and I've had a lot of people give me advice about this, is it can start to detract from your core offer as well. And you've talked about the ecosystem, and I think what I found really interesting about you and the way that your business is made up is that, to your point around the cleaning business, actually a lot of the businesses that you own complement one another and have created efficiencies or platforms of integration for you and your businesses. So it's not actually a question, sorry, that was on my list that I sent you, but if you were to talk about the businesses within your ecosystem for anybody that hasn't heard what different businesses you have before, could you just give us a quick rundown?
So we've got obviously your Charles Cox stuff, which covers pretty much everything to do with property that isn't estate agency. But subsidiaries to that we have a company that buys freehold titles, so blocks of flats where they buy freehold for ground rents and lease extensions. Charles Cox Assets. We have a bunch of SPVs, which is those property companies where they might own, like the building we're sat in today is owned by a company, but it's the only thing they own, and then the rental income comes into there. You've got a surveying practice, lettings practice. We have another company that does stock shares and things, investments in the stock market as well, which is just a way of like locking away funds for us. But it actually does, generally speaking, it makes a profit when people aren't disrupting the stock market too much.
Indeed.
And then you've got the cleaning business, which complements the lettings department, as well as cleans the office and even this room. They come around and hoover it and stuff. But they also do communal hallways, they do car valeting, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a maintenance business as well, because obviously lots of stuff breaks. We're not full-on construction. We're more one step up from a handyman, if you like a good handyman, or like a multi-trader would be the correct word, I suppose. So like this podcast room, this right up their street, they could build this kind of stuff, put a kitchen in or a new bathroom, which obviously we're buying through our development company, a lot of unloved property that needs new kitchens, bathrooms, so that's quite a good system for us to do. So all of those kind of things feed into each other. You've got, I don't know, someone rings up, we manage the building, block management or lettings, and they ring up and say, we've inherited this horrible property from my nan and it's in the right state, and you keep sending us bills to pay for the maintenance and we can't afford them, we want to sell it. Oh, okay, do you want to sell it to us or whatever? Oh, we're desperate to get rid of it. Okay, let's have a look at it. It's a bit unloved. We can do the surveying on it and then go, right, look, it needs X, Y, Z, so this is what it's worth. You'll probably get more if you put it on Rightmove, but this is our offer and we'll proceed if that is what you want to do. We then buy it from them. We then deal with all the finance, remortgaging it and the rest of it. We refurbish it. We'll clean it at the end, and then it goes back.
Multi-trades in.
Yeah, and then it goes back to the lettings department, and the lettings department manage it. And then when the tenant moves out and it needs cleaning, the cleaners come back in. In between, there's repairs to do, and that's feeding all of our ecosystem with some sort of cash flow along the way, return, and the businesses are charging each other and the rest of it, rather than that money kind of leaving us. I mean, we don't do like we're not gas safe, so we can't put in a new boiler, so that has to be outsourced. But the general type of stuff that is breaking and needing repairing and cleaning is what we can just do ourselves essentially now.
Yeah, amazing. So you've talked a bit about structure and value and that obviously leads quite nicely on to something that I heard you talk about a lot. We've mentioned it already in today's podcast, but building a business with an exit mindset. So I've heard you say this a lot, and that every founder should be building to sell, even if they never plan to. Why do you think that is so important?
I think it's good practice to have your business set up and done in such a way that you could sell it if you needed to sell it, or if you wanted to sell it, because things change. So you value your business at £500,000, and then someone like Facebook comes along and says, we'll give you £2 million for it. You might be like, that's interesting. That's 3 times, 4 times more than I valued it at. So that might be worth doing, because then I can exit that market and put that money back into the other business operations that I've got, and then go like gangbusters somewhere else if you wanted to, if you're cut from that cloth, or you could retire and go on that cruise if you wanted to. But I think that in order for you to always try and build your businesses so that they are in a position that you can exit is not just about separating them out and having that group structure, but making sure that you understand all your accounts and the rest of it. Your balance sheets are all correct. I mean, we're not perfect like any means. Sometimes some things get misbooked and misallocated, but when you shift through it with a fine tooth comb, you're like, we've ordered £1,000 worth of paper and they've put it under as an asset because they think it's stock. But we're not a stock-based business, so it wouldn't really go on the balance sheet as an asset. But we might buy a new motor vehicle, but not directly from a main dealer with VAT added to it. Might buy like a used one from a customer or something, and then that becomes part of the profit and loss. Well, actually, that's a capital bit of expenditure. So you're always making sure your business is in a presentable state for your own knowledge. But that is what people will look at when they come in. Like when I look at people's books and I can't work out head nor tail where all the money's going, and the owner's got they've got a car and their wife's being paid, and they're all normal stuff business owners do. And then you look at it and you're like, right, I'll strip all of that out. And then you have to go back to them and go, is all of this realistic, or is this anything in here that I'm going to continue to need? Like, I'm clearly not going to need to pay for your wife's car and your car anymore. And I get that. And mobile phones, you're the business owners, so I won't need those. So I've struck for those. But there's all these other subscriptions. There's this, it looks like golf membership to me, but I don't know. It's not a networking thing.
Yeah.
What is that? And then if it is a networking thing, am I going to have to continue to do that in order to build the business? Are they just doing it because it's free golf as well? Or is it part and parcel of running that business? So I'm going to have to find a member of staff to continue to go to that event that they sort of sponsored. You think about, I know we mentioned the Barrow quite a lot.
We do. Paul Britton loves this podcast.
I'm sure he does. But if you take that, like if I was to sell like the whole of Charles Scott's, like who's going to go and sit in that seat?
Yeah.
And is it imperative that this business grows that somebody attends that event every single month?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that I would look for in there, and that is making sure your business is in a position to sell it if you needed to, so you can explain that to somebody.
Yeah. So practically speaking, a lot of the reason that you should build a business ready to exit is kind of finance, accounting, tax related.
Yeah, structures and stuff like that. Like if you've got senior members of staff, you might put them in on a profit share thing, or like what you call growth share. So you value your business at day one, you give them 10%, and then in 10 years' time it's worth XYZ. They'll get 10% of that growth.
Yeah.
That would give me great comfort if I was buying like a really big business, because it means those people are probably not going to leave.
Yeah. They're
and
invested.
That's something that you started 10 years ago, not last week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think having that mindset, you will never be perfect. There'll be stuff in there that gets in there, and it isn't perfect anyway. But if you can go from like 10% ready to sell to 70%, you'll find that if you need to sell it, because sometimes you might need to sell it quickly, sometimes you might need to just sell it because you want to exit, or it might be health, or you might just decide you've had enough of the industry, or you get a good offer. Then you can act a bit quicker then, can't you?
Yeah. So do you think that the most common mistake that founders make when they don't structure ready to sell is that they can't then make the most of opportunities as they arise?
Well, there is that, but also I think understanding if your business is worth anything as well. Because people go, look, it pays my salary, it pays the staff salary, it pays the rent. But what's its intrinsic value? Like, what do I actually have as a capital investment? When I want to retire, what have I got here?
Yeah.
How do I value it? And if you can't look in your own books and decide, if you can't understand things like EBITDA figures and stuff like that, you're going to struggle a little bit to really understand what your business is worth. And most business owners think it's pie high. We're turning over 100 grand a year, so I want 200 grand for it. And you're like, yeah, but you're only making 10 grand profit.
Yeah.
And that 10 grand you're paying yourself.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be in the business, so I'm going to have to replace you. So actually your business doesn't make any money.
Yeah. I think financial literacy is such a big thing, and it's so often overlooked. I mean, I've spent a lot of my career in finance, as has my husband. So as a household, we're relatively financially literate. But even as a new business owner, there's so many things that I've had to learn and teach myself around accountancy, finance, and I've been really lucky to have the right people around me. But I think if you undervalue that, or you don't have the right people giving you advice, that makes it really tricky in order to build a scalable business.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to think, if you were buying a business, what would you want to see?
Yeah.
And how quickly do you want to see that? And that's kind of what you need to build your business about.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move now to looking ahead a little bit and the next 5 to 10 years. So we've talked about you building and buying businesses, but what does the next decade look like for you?
Well, I suppose our longer term strategy is to really probably build up our core services to do with the surveying and the lettings business and the rest of it over the next 10 years by buying and selling acquisitions, essentially to bolt on to that. And become a fairly sizable business in the southeast. Generally speaking, we're between Brighton and Eastbourne. We'll probably start to go inland a little bit, but to build structures and the rest of it. So it's actually a business that doesn't require, not that I'm in it, but it doesn't require me or any of the really senior people to be in it at any one moment. So like a bigger business can come by us and they've already got like a head of operations, HR person, whatever. They step into those people's shoes from my existing team, and then they can rebrand, run, or whatever they want to do with that. Probably a 10-year exit strategy might be to do with the lettings business, but I'm not fixated on that is the ultimate exit to it, because you've got to remember a lot of the lettings business is our own properties that we're managing essentially. So we will probably also use the money to buy more property as we go along. So that is an acquisition in its own right, but it's asset based. So someone said to me, is just like fast pounds is like money coming through the till, cash flow, and then slow pounds is like your property because it slowly goes up as an asset value. So our strategy is to invest in both simultaneously. as much as we can.
Yeah.
To grow our kind of asset-based stuff, which we can pull upon if there's hard times, so we can dip into that, sell it, refinance it, take some money out of it. But you've got this cash-generating trading businesses. We do think that the cleaning and the lettings are probably going to have, or will be a good focus for us going forward, to build up and get to a point where we'll probably exit from those at some point, I would imagine. I'm not going to live forever, and I like working, but you kind of, the trading businesses do require a lot of more input than your kind of asset based. So probably over a 20-year period, as I get into my 60s, I'll be shifting more towards asset-based stuff. But for right now, it's about acquiring businesses to bolt onto our existing ecosystem, if you like, making sure that they kind of come in, they're all good, and at all times we remain in a sellable position, if you like, if something was to come along our way.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of legacy, so you obviously talked about in 20 years' time. I'm just thinking the next 10 years. I'm not retiring you early or anything like that, Matt. But when you think about your legacy that you'd like to create over the next 10 years, personally and professionally, what does that look like?
Well, I suppose in a perfect world, I would quite like a management buyout, because then it will definitely retain the name and the rest of it, as opposed to selling to a big corporation and then they decide to fade the name away. That would be quite nice in terms of leaving a legacy. And I guess time comes as how important is that versus the money, and only will you know at the time. We might decide we prefer the money than the bothering about the legacy, or actually the legacy's become quite important to me, that it lives on, if you like. I can't see my kids particularly getting involved with it, but then my dad might have said that when I was my daughter probably not so much, but my son maybe, but he's 16, so we'll see how he goes.
I know. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was 16, so he may come back around.
And then I have a younger child as well, who's only 9, so there's hope there. But I think the legacy thing, I'm not going to be like crying about it if somebody wants to buy like Charles Cox or whatever the other things are. But I do think that probably at that stage they have some intrinsic value anyway, so you'd be a bit silly to kind of delete the name, if you like, especially unless you already have that established for yourself.
Yeah, so, unless you're swallowed.
Yeah, definitely prefer a management buyout, because I think that's just nice, because then you're giving it to good hands and the rest of it, and also you can feel like if they make you an offer, you can allow them to pay over a long period of time. So it feels like you're helping people out as well. Like, I've won at this game for 10 years, and then I'm giving you guys a chance to have a go at winning at it.
Yeah.
Rather than just flogging it off and you all go and work for somebody else. So.
Yeah, there's definitely something about passing the baton.
Yes.
I think, especially when you've been surrounded by those people, and those people have ultimately helped to support you to shape the business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but.
We'll see.
I guess it's that kind of at the time thing, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think that's it, because you just don't know what's around the corner, right? So it's easy for me to ask you this. Maybe we'll play it back in 10 years' time.
Yeah, definitely,
So speaking of legacy, and obviously given that my career, my business is all about brand, marketing, personal branding, it would be amiss of me not to talk to you about the importance of brand. So when you're evaluating potential businesses and acquisitions to be involved in, how much weight do you place on the strength of a business's brand?
Well, I suppose it depends what we're going to do with the business. Like, we looked at one business where it had a really good reputation, but internally it was a mess.
Yeah,
so to sort it out probably needed a lot of work, but... in that process, what the proposal was that really the name would be like faded out or whatever, but actually a lot of the value is in that particular brand. So if you're not going to be able to capitalise on that, that drastically affects the valuation. There's no point in buying, it's been around 100 years, heritage, you buy it and then you change the name next day.
Yeah.
Like, you've just basically just thrown a load of money away.
Yeah.
So I have to figure out, is that really worth us hanging on to? If we're buying a heritage brand, but actually our ecosystem's to amalgamate it, then how's that going to work?
Yeah, I think it was the World Economic Forum who recently quoted that 25% of a business's value is intrinsically linked to its reputation.
Yeah.
So to your point, if you completely like debadge it, you're, depending on what the perception and reputation of that brand is, you're devaluing almost like instantaneously by 25%. So we've talked a little bit before about the podcast, and obviously we've flipped the mic today. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you set up the podcast in the first place, and what the objectives are around how you and Luke think about the Enterprise podcast, what the objectives are, how that helps to support your marketing efforts?
Well, I suppose the original conception of it was formed on the basis that I was like Mr. Charles Cox, although I had all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And people started to be like, oh, you've acquired businesses and the rest of it, and you've got this knowledge and the rest of it. And I just thought it'd be quite nice to have some sort of hints and tips and stuff like that, or help other business owners, because I seem to get a lot of momentum from people asking me, like, how do you acquire this? What do you do? I've got this problem with my accounts. I've got this thing. And it was like kind of like counselling for businesses, but freebies.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I wonder if, I mean, the podcasts are kind of, fairly popular and they were growing a bit in strength. I wonder if I should actually sort of not monetize this, but actually capture this in a sense that's going to do me some good as well as the other business owners. And I like talking about business. I like talking to business owners. I find it fascinating how people view things differently and approach things and stuff like that. So I just thought, well, we'll give it a go. I'm happy to chuck a bit of money at it, see how it goes. And originally I had, before Luke, a lady called Danny who was super bubbly and had loads of energy and the rest of it. But the problem that we had at the start is like anything is getting a bit of traction, and it was required quite a lot of work to get guests on and the rest of it. You had your immediate kind of thing. So, yeah. But actually what happened over a time was that people were starting to come to me and ask about coming on the show and things like that. Like, we hadn't really envisaged having like this podcast room, and we've got some leaflets and stuff with QR codes on that people can scan now and stuff like that. It's things that Luke's been working on. So, I think weirdly it got to a point where I was almost like, I don't know what the point of this is, because you get a bit dejected with stuff after a while, like maybe after about like 8 podcasts and it's still not getting the traction. And all of a sudden it's like people started to be like, oh, can I come on your show? Can I come on your thing? And you're like, oh, actually, like, it's not for money, it's just for branding of me, isn't it?
Yeah.
And letting people know. And then people would say to me, like, oh, I know what you're about already because I've watched your podcast. So like even last week someone sat next to me, and then I was talking to her about some marketing that they do in hospitality, because we're looking at buying a hotel, and they were doing marketing for hotels. So I was chatting, and she said, she said, oh, are you Charles or are you Max? I sat behind a banner, and she was like, and she said, well, I know who you are already, like, and I don't even know. I mean, I've got her card, but I don't know who she was at the time. But she knew who I was. Yeah. Just from probably following me on LinkedIn and seeing the podcast and the rest of it. Didn't really remember me from being Charles Cox, and I was like, that's kind of quite cool, because that's what I wanted, really. Yeah,
I think that's it. And I think, a lot of people have different conceptions of what personal brand is, but ultimately that is what you're talking about. You are using this as an opportunity to demonstrate who you are and what you stand for. And ultimately what you're standing for on the Enterprise podcast is a business owner who has lessons to share, who enjoys mentoring, coaching new business owners, is kind of what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you've created a medium for people to be able to come on and be interviewed by you and share kind of their aspirations, any challenges they might have, and hopefully get some great advice from someone who's lived it and done it previously. And it's really important to say, actually, that it's absolutely free to be on your podcast, so you can apply online. I know that we were going to talk about this at the end, but it is it's completely free to apply.
You can do me a plug.
Yeah, there we go. We'll market it for you, Matt.
Yeah.
But you know, I met Hayley at the Barrow Club, which another plug, sorry.
Yeah.
And Hayley said to me, you know, you'd be great on the podcast. Why don't you apply? And I'd never been a podcast guest before.
Yeah.
And I've gone on to do 2 or 3 other podcasts. You know, I'm interviewing you again. You're number 4 now, first interview slot, Matt. But you know, as a personal brand strategy advisor, you know, you put yourself out there, you've done something great, you've created a medium in order for you to be able to share what you're about, and you've given the opportunity to others to do it.
Yeah.
And they just go online, don't they? They complete a form. That's the basis of your questions.
Yeah, I mean, mine's much more, as we discussed before, much more freestyle-y than yours. Obviously, I have the base of their answers, but I like the organic conversation and what comes out of it. I think for me personally, it was about kind of establishing that I'm a bit more than just like the property guy or whatever, and especially as I move much more into working on a business and not in it.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite so public facing in my own business anymore. So you know that, and then people would, you know, search me on the internet or look up or whatever, and there's a little bit more to me than just, you know, a bunch of LinkedIn posts about some, you know, dilapidated properties we bought last week or some lettings thing that I've pressed, you know, share on or something like that. You know, there's a bit more to me, and starting to look at things like my LinkedIn profile. Like, it doesn't just, I think I've changed mine a bit now. I've followed some advice from somebody else who deals with these things, that it doesn't say like, I'm an entrepreneur, blah, 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 which is probably what it said before. It just says like changing people's perception of property and looking after people's biggest assets or something like that. Or
passionate advocate of great tax.
Yeah, something like that. Growing businesses, you know, for ultimate exit strategies or whatever it might be. So
you've humanized your business and your brand.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I think that's probably a fair comment to say. Yeah, I'm trying to not make it look quite so generated by ChatGPT.
Fair. We all use ChatGPT, but it's the level at which you use it is my perception of it. I've got a question for you. It's a bit of a selfish question, actually. Do you think that business leaders underestimate the commercial value of personal branding?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it depends what industry you're in and what you want to do. I do think that personal branding in the right sense is really important for any business owner. And somebody said to me once, it's like going to the gym. You know, you don't really want to do it, but it's good for you.
I love that. Maybe that should be the short that I put up on my LinkedIn profile. I think from my perspective, I hear so many people talk about it and how uncomfortable it makes them. But I think if people thought more about the value creation element of personal branding versus the self-promotion, that people would be a lot more comfortable with it, especially in the UK. I think people automatically think of it as talking heads, walking along the pavement, that sort of thing, which I do. And most of the time I'm doing it because I actually don't want to sit down with my camera in a static place, because to me that feels really uncomfy. And I think it's about finding what you hope to be able to share as value and sharing it in a way that feels more authentic to you. Yeah. And for you, it's the podcast, because you're having a chat, it's unscripted, you know, you go off on a tangent, a segue, and you come back to where you started. For other people, it's, you know, preparing questions and having a bit more of a structure. But ultimately, you have to do what feels right for you. And all of the people that I see successfully creating personal brand are doing it in a way that's good for them. It's not how they're being told to do it. And I would never work with a client and tell them what to do. Because I just think ultimately you need to feel happy, comfortable and confident in what you're sharing in order to be successful at it.
Exactly that. I'm not very good at the walking down the street talking thing or standing at the train station doing it. I feel like a very British person, you know, kind of quite conserved about making a scene in front of people.
There's very few people around me when I'm doing it. I do check the pavements, Matt.
But I do. But I don't mind too much. We haven't done so much of it lately just because I've been super busy with other things. But when we used to do the hints and tips videos, which you'll see early on in this enterprise channel, that was quite. I needed the flair, the people around me. Where I'd often have like Danny there and stuff, like, because there was there. Everybody was there. It felt like a little bit more comfortable than like doing it on your own on an iPhone. Because there was more purpose to it essentially. I think everyone is different and your medium, but some level of personal branding, whatever you see that is, and learning what works as well. A lot of people, I used to be terrible for it, and I still do it now. You just take a picture of the room and then that's it. Really what LinkedIn wants to see is selfies and pictures of other people tagged in it and the rest of it. They do much better, but sometimes it's quite hard as a inherently British person to kind of leap in there and do all of that all the time. So, as I say, a bit like going to the gym.
Yeah, but to your point,
it's good for you.
It is good for you. It is good for you. It's good for your brand and your reputation. And ultimately, there's more and more distrusting company brands, which is why I think personal brand is really having a moment at the moment. But to your point about like the pictures in the event room, take the selfie, have the pictures with your mates or whatever. But in the value creation versus self-promotion conundrum that I was talking about previously, share what John Kennett spoke about on Friday at the Barrow Club. What were your key takeaways as a way of obviously giving your audience value because they weren't there to hear what John had to say, for example. But I think that mindset switch really changes how people come across when they're talking about what they do and who they are and how they want to share their value. So
it is, and I think it's a time element as well, and the
massively.
content, and if you've got that panache about you to do that as well. Like a lot of people use ChatGPT and things like that in order to generate those posts, but they're quite generic. You can normally tell when
you can so tell.
Yeah, where it's got emojis been inserted to
the
add
M dash. Get rid of the M dash, everyone. Just use some commas. It's much better.
If you can find a medium, whether it's this podcast or it's doing something else, then I think that does your personal brand and value creation about you. You are a business yourself. You are your ambassador for whatever you have created. So this isn't about, look at me, I'm Matt Cox, and look at what all I've achieved. This is like, actually, I'm a piece of marketing material for my own business. I am, if I had a really flamboyant member of staff who was really popular with the general business community, I'd be looking to capitalise on that. Yeah,
absolutely. Matt, before we wrap up, I really wanted to take you through a few quick fire questions. If you think back to all of your previous podcast guests, what's one lesson that you've learned from interviewing other entrepreneurs that's really stuck with you?
Well, I think something that has really stuck with me is the fact that we often cover two or three subjects quite a lot, and they come up repetitively. So dyslexia or learning at school or financial literacy, those kind of problems, like school-based learning, if you like, at the beginning of people's journeys, shapes them a bit. And I thought that's quite interesting. And an awful lot of people, as adults, about imposter syndrome as well. It seems to be quite kind of common themes that we talk about on the podcast, that early years development and whatever it might have been, whether it's dyslexia or some other learning difficulty or something, or the way you're brought up, really does shape the way you are as an adult. And a number of people that suffer a bit with imposter syndrome, and I think that does hold them back a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard several of your guests talk about imposter syndrome before. If you could start your, we're going to use inverted commas, entrepreneurial journey again, what's one thing you do differently?
I think I would probably have the end in mind more now than I did at the start. I was probably like a typical business owner when you're 25 or whatever, you don't really know what you don't know, do you? So I would probably have run my business in a different way from the start. So I would definitely, I didn't see the value in like other mentors, reading books and all that kind of stuff. And I think that you can learn a lot of stuff from that.
Yeah.
I'd definitely do that differently.
You do that differently. Is there anybody, you mentioned mentors, is there anybody in particular that you want to call out, or any sort of particular skills that it was great to get mentorship on?
No one person, I would say. I mean, obviously, you got my dad and family members and the rest of it, and even my mum. My mum and dad are split up. My mum wasn't very good with money, but that actually helped me then be good with money.
Yeah.
So, in a weird kind of role reversal, it was probably a bit of a mentor to not be like that, I
Yeah.
suppose. Bless her.
To see the impact
Yeah.
of not having that financial literacy, which
Exactly.
let's face it, isn't a given for everybody.
No.
And it's not necessarily something that we're all naturally good at either. My husband would attest to that.
Yes. So will my wife. She's not you could be dead tomorrow syndrome comes up a lot. But yeah, I think that the mentoring, a lot of business people around me. I mean, Norman Mayhew, who's Sussex Signs. I don't think we've had him on the show, but he has been in business for a long time.
I've
and
met Norman recently, actually.
yeah.
He's amazing.
He does have a lot of wisdom about him. Not always necessarily what I would do,
Yeah.
but it is useful. A lot of people are quite calming in business as well, and like take a sort of me casa su casa-y kind of attitude to things, and a bit yin and yangy, so they're quite good. But often a lot of reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read that when I was fairly young, and that kind of changed my mindset about property and asset building and good debt and bad debt, and
Yeah.
understanding the difference between them, not necessarily just in property but in life. Richest Man in Babylon taught me about compound interest and the dangers of it when you're paying it. And I think it was Warren Buffett or something, said those who, it was Albert Einstein that said those who understand it earn it, and those that don't pay it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good. And then, yeah, lots of other influential stuff about building teams and leadership and the rest of it. I love a good audio book. I do suffer with dyslexia, so I don't read very well, like actual books, although we have some here. But they're like, for display purposes only. I don't
They're for
know
guests
if
to
I've
read while we're
actually
waiting
read
for
any
you.
of those books, but I would have listened to all of them.
Some of them
through.
look like library books. Do you take these back? Or have you just acquired them?
We don't talk about that.
Okay, sorry.
I
Cut
got
that
a
bit.
really, really big overdue fine. I think actually some of those might have come from when I was at uni, and now I'm not at uni, so they probably do belong to Brighton University. Don't come after me.
Don't come after me.
Because that'll be a big old bill, wouldn't it?
That would.
Yeah, so I think that I listen to a lot of books and stuff, and those are really good information for you. A lot of YouTubes, and listen to people as well. Like I would go in my early 20s to networking events. The 10-minute talker would come on and they'd be talking about something that didn't feel particularly relevant to me, but you never know when you're going to pick a nugget of information up.
I think that's really important, actually, and the continual learning.
Yeah.
And I've started to do that, actually, because I've gone from like a big team of people, hundreds of people in our office, to now working in an office of one currently. And so that like learning through osmosis is so important. So it's like the podcast you listen to on the car journey back from the nursery drop off, or like to your point, going to an event and hearing the 10 to 15 minute speech, or proactively seeking out entrepreneurs, founders, people that are of interest to you. Like I recently went and listened to Mary Portas talking. She's doing a book tour at the moment. And Bobby Brown, the founder of Bobby Brown Makeup, who's now started a new business called Jones Road. That was really interesting because she was talking about selling her business 4 or 5 years in, staying within the business for nearly 20 years, exiting the business, and then waiting for her non-compete clause to come out 25 years later before she could start Jones Road. She's like waited and waited and waited, and now she's in her like mid to late 60s. I'm not doing her disservice. She talks about this very openly. And she's started a brand new business again because, to your point, the entrepreneurial spirit of her is like, I'm not done yet. I want to build something else, which is just nuts.
You'd literally be bored, because those sort of people are just wired up differently to your average pay-YE person who just wants to go home, watch the telly and be themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that those entrepreneurial people are wired up differently. They'll get to 60 years old and they'll be like, I need something to keep my brain active, if nothing else. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, final question. This does put you on the spot a little bit, I'm sorry. If you could interview anybody next, who would it be and why?
Ooh.
I'm not going to lead you one way or the other here. You could go big or local.
I mean, I would I would like to. I mean, I suppose if we're going big, I do admire the people that have been on Dragon's Den. So Deborah Mead and Peter Jones, they've been there for a long time and long, and I do admire them. I love Richard Branson,
Yeah.
but he's like the master of personal brand. He is his own brand in his own right, really, isn't he?
He is.
So yeah, those sort of people. But yeah, more locally. There's a few companies who I don't know the owners of, but they've kind of built up fairly successful businesses and then sold them or merged them with other companies. And I would be interested to see how their journey was through that. So no one in particular, but anybody that fits in that remit of like building a business for like 10 years, then exiting that, but not completely exiting. They might work in the business or they've got other businesses, and just seeing how their journey was. So like you mentioned before, my forte is talking to kind of foundery, smaller business owners, all people. I mean, one of the businesses I spoke to, just so people are clear, was like a multi-million-pound business doing haulage.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to a young lad who was a race car driver his remit was to get sponsorship for the car, so it's a massive various array. But I don't speak to too many people that are like, we built a business up for £10 million, sold it, and then I'm doing this now. That would be quite nice to talk to those people. Or the similar in property as well.
Yeah.
So that profile of person.
That profile.
Whereas if you went
Luke.
It's
the new task from Matt. We need some of these people.
What we need is those people that are a bit shy who are going to come and they're coming in at this end of the market. But yeah, I'd love to chat with Deborah Meaden and
maybe we need to put a call out to the i360. No, that would be. I think you've got a good roster there. There's big aspirations, I reckon, for the podcast, which sounds good to me. I think you'll really enjoy speaking to Lindsay Brown. I think she's a guest coming up on the podcast because she has very much done that. She's worked within businesses, helped to grow them to a certain scale, and then also worked in other businesses that have built to exit. And she talks very passionately about that. So I think you'll really enjoy her as a guest, actually.
Yeah.
Matt, that comes to the end of my questioning. Thank you so much for turning the tables today. I have learned a lot, and it's been great to get to know you better and to understand the philosophy behind the Enterprise podcast. I think our listeners will come away very inspired and think about their own business value and legacy in a very different way now. So thank you very much.
Good. I'm glad I hope I impart some of that spirit onto people. So
I think you definitely have. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you.